Yes. Do a formal introduction. Welcome back. Before we move on to the next panel, I would like to make a mention or a call out to IIUSA. It is the regional center, DB5 Regional Center Association in the U.S. and IIUSA and Bangkok District Chapter. They've had a very positive relationship for the past 3 years. They've had somebody come and join us in our past 3 conferences, and this year, Cletus Weber is one of the board of directors. Some of the other of our sponsors are also board of directors too. So although he was speaking from his unofficial position, we do want to recognize that he was here also in capacity of the director of IIUSA. Moving on to our last panel of the day. Woo! NIV calls for panel number 2, inadmissibility issues. And our discussion leader is Stacy Lee. Stacy.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, Australia, and somebody over in USA. My name is Stacy Lee. I'm from local in Hong Kong. First, welcome you all attending this wonderful and meaningful conference, the 6th annual Counselor Processing Conference, organized by Taylor Chapter, Bangkok Chapter. This is the last session for today's conference. The topic is admissibility issues or inadmissibility issues. That is, after your client get B or F visas, that means they overcome 214B, or for employment visa, EH and L, which 240B is not an issue because of the due intent thing. However, they still may not be able to get visas because if they found violation of 212A, 212A1, medical or mental problems, 212A2 is criminal or crime involving moral turpitude, or 212A6C1 is fraud and misrepresentation, or 212A6E, aiding and smuggling, A9, unlawful stay. These are the issues that we are going to explore and discuss for the next hour. Before we begin, let me first introduce our speakers. From the government side, we have Mr. Bradley Norton, the NIV chief from Hong Kong, and also Mr. Martin Lam, which everyone should know by now because he's so kind to several panels for us. Means to be here. And then from chapter, we have Brian Murray from Virginia and Ronald Neer from Connecticut. Now let's begin with you first. Brian?
Sure. So we want to start here with an issue that's been referenced a couple times today, but it's the issue that has emerged in the last couple of years of prudential revocations for DUI arrests. This is something that I deal with a lot on the state side, consulting clients who are non-immigrant visa holders, dealing with revocation when it occurs, and they're going through the criminal process. And so this is an interesting opportunity for me to kind of check what the advice that I'm giving to clients against what the experience is from the consular side when they get back, try to go back and reapply for that visa. And what I generally tell my clients is to, if they've been arrested for DUI, is to go through the process, resolve the criminal issue, of course, do all the requirements of that in resolving that conviction, and if possible, be consistent with their visa. They can remain in the country and get that proof of rehabilitation and remain in the country for more than a year. That's the ideal sort of setup prior to going back to the their country to reapply for their visa. It's not always possible, but it's my understanding that is going to give them the best chance to be able to reapply for the visa. With that in mind, I would love to hear from both the officers, just in general, the process as you see it when you have an individual who was previously held a non-immigrant visa, has had it credentially revoked, and is back before you seeking a new visa.
Okay, probably so you hear my voice. What do we do? Where do I start with this? Okay, so it's unique in the world, right? We can't revoke visas at post for people in the United States, except for, this one, DUI, odd. It's odd. And I'll be the first to say that I am not aware of the policy or the rationale behind it. I can guess the news, it does make it even to the reports in post that I served in, but we take this seriously. It's so stupid. It's so unnecessary for anyone, particularly someone who is being watched like all aliens are, because they're going to have to reapply, they're going to have to check their status, they're going to have to do something. It's so useless for them to be arrested for DUI. We will send you to the panel physician. Your time in the United States, that whole 1 year thing, that may be real valuable from the criminal side, but from the visa application side, we're sending you the panel physician, and then we're going to see from you, you're in for a good questioning from us. Why would we want to risk having our name attached to a visa when you have demonstrated that you simply cannot control yourself? I mean, there is just no upside to this, zero. I don't care if you are an H-1B, if you're a student at Harvard, it does not matter. There is no upside to this. So this has to be a real, I'll say, I don't want to use the term youthful in the literal sense. This has to be a real mistaken indiscretion here. This can't be anything that suggests to officers in Manila that you had any moment of clear thought in your head and then went and did this. I mean, this is basically something that this was just one-off and nobody got hurt, and you were caught out in the middle of farm country 7,000 miles from anywhere because you ran the one-stop sign in 5 counties. So we're serious about looking at this, and we will subject you to all sorts of questioning to determine your fitness as a non-substance abuser, as a person who can exercise good judgment and follow the laws of the United States. So that's all I have to say about it. So that's a big soapbox for me. I don't know if it really answers the question, but you should get the flavor from that.
So, I mean, I think that you've, in some of the other panels, you've made it clear that obviously the purpose of the interview is the statement, it is hearing directly from the individual. But are there documents that would be compelling to you in that analysis, like proofs that they're remaining sober, or rehabilitation programs, that sort of thing, that would be helpful in particular in making that determination that you think it isn't an isolated incident?
Sure. I mean, those documents are helpful, but it's mainly up to the officer to try to determine that the individual does not have an ongoing problem, and that this will not occur again. I mean, I think what we're getting to here is judgment, and does the person have some kind of condition that might cause a relapse of this? So those kind of documents are important, but the panel physician report is probably one of the key documents, other than for documentary reasons. I mean, legal is more important.
And then just sort of a similar question: what sort of factors? Okay, say you get the panel physician report back, and it's just a class B determination, meaning that it's not determination that the person is necessarily going to be a future risk, but what are the other factors that you're looking at? What are the strongest factors that you think of in terms of the recency? What is far enough sort of back to be of lesser concern to you? I mean, are there certain bright lines?
No, I mean, recency is one factor that we look at, whether this has occurred before, of course, or there's a history of this, because that does come up. Additionally, the officer will conduct a whole interview. I think what Martin was getting at is somebody who has an error of judgment, makes an error of judgment that puts themselves and others at risk, will raise a flag to officers. So we'll start looking at the person's entire situation to see if they still qualify for the visa. That's, I think, one of the reasons why you go through this process, to make sure this person qualifies.
That is, because one of the, I mean, I'll just to cap this all off here. The typical example here is alcohol, but that's not what DUI means. DUI can mean other things. And so we're talking about the idiocy of several states who have gone lax in their drug laws. I don't know why. What we might term loosely recreational drugs versus prescription drugs. I mean, if you have a medical need for something, and maybe there was some mitigating factor there, where you might have mistakenly taken too much of a dose of something, and it has an effect, or maybe something triggered, maybe you had grapefruit juice and it made you drowsier than it otherwise did. Those are the kinds of examples where I think we are much more likely to find that there was just a simple mistake. But when it's something so easy, so silly as you drank too much as a student or as an adult, that's not something we're just going to be looking to excuse too easily.
So that's pretty encouraging, actually. That I've seen cases where an individual, many cases actually, where an individual is arrested and convicted of DUI, where they were literally sleeping in their vehicle and had the car on, keeping them warm because they were intentionally choosing not to drive because they had too much to drink. But under the laws, they were technically guilty of operation of the vehicle. I assume that you would. What you say is that you would look at those factors in mitigation.
If we get information to that level, that's a lot of facts that we normally don't see, and that's where the record is going to have to be provided to us, both the court record, the arrest record, something that's going to indicate that. Self-serving statements aren't going to be that helpful. They're not that probative of anything. But to the extent that there's some official documentation of the facts and circumstances that show that, that's going to be useful.
So sort of shifting up from there, like looking at prudential revocation. Well, actually, one other question in terms of prudential revocation for DWI that is actually done at the post itself. What about related offenses that aren't quite DWI? I'm thinking in particular in Virginia, we have something we refer to as baby DUI, which basically is if you're under 21 and you've had an ounce of alcohol in your blood and you're behind the wheel, you're guilty of this other offense that's colloquially referred to as baby DWI. Would you look at the details of an offense a little bit more beyond the surface to see if it actually involves sort of the types of behavior that's more closely aligned to a DWI? What is the process to determine whether or not you actually go through with the revocation?
Sure. It will depend on what the charge is. We can look up and see, of course, what the charge, you mentioned Virginia law, and if it meets a certain threshold, and this is where we sometimes refer things back to the legal advisor's office, then we're both.
And so then, to my other question, prudential revocation more broadly, are you seeing cases where individuals have had their visas revoked for other offenses, possible CIMT, just arrests for CIMTs that weren't yet even convictions, and then them coming back to apply for visas, new visas later. Are you seeing that at your posts?
I mean, I don't know how much that we can talk about this. We probably have to refer you back to the Bureau of Consular Affairs, Legal Advisor's Office. But if you want statistics or more about that. But we do see cases of people who've been credentially revoked and they come in for interview to determine whether or not they're still eligible for visa.
Okay, let's move to the next quite common recently happened in China. Is F1B aliens and then got caught for shoplifting, and then and basically is they got convicted and on probation or community service 1 week or so. When they return, of course, when we file the new application, they lie on the application, they file no one will know. Because I mean, in some states it's misdemeanor, and then basically the boss will say, oh, this you plead guilty, no problem. Just 1 day, 1 week, community service. What your line officer would you be in those situations? There are two things.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's hard to talk about a hypothetical situation, but understand this is an interview, and there are some very serious questions that we ask on that form. Are you a terrorist? And if you can't get certain things right, and let's even be on the side and say, have you ever been refused a visa? And you check no, and it's like, are you sure about that? Are you taught? Well, actually, yes. The answer to that should have been yes. Then you start wondering, we as officers who have a duty to protect national security and are looking at this from a risk assessment standpoint, they answered no here when it should have been yes. Did they make any other mistakes on the form? Mistakes that will be more problematic for me.
Brett touches on a couple of things. Euphemistic mistake. Oh, mistake. Yeah, it's not a mistake. It's an omission, whether it's material or not. It's not a mistake. The form is clear. How much more clear? We could make it with blinky lights. It's an electronic form. We can do that. I don't know how much more clear we can make it. My favorite, Brett points to one. My favorite is the question that asks if you've ever been arrested. No. And then I've got this. So you've never been arrested anywhere, including Norwalk, Connecticut? No, never been. The question I suppose is, if people, it's 2018, you're gonna hear me say these things. If we were here doing this for another 7 hours, I'd be hitting the same things. It's 2018. We have this information. It's there. There's this thing I've heard of the internet. It exists. Computers talk to one another. We talk to computers, and it's really bad when the young man or young woman compounds their light-fingeredness with lying about it, and then we talked about timely attraction earlier, and then no, and then wait a minute, that's not timely attraction. So they're just digging the hole deeper and deeper and deeper. And of course, there's your run-of-the-mill people who are afraid, and then you have your other ones who think that the law doesn't apply to them. They're the ones who, interestingly enough, we have, at least at the post that I have been at, we have the lowest regard for it, because they have no remorse whatsoever. And you talk about this in the guise of students. I see diplomats, officials, going and shoplifting lipstick. If you're going to do the crime, at least go for the computer or a gold box. Why get arrested for a candy bar? I don't understand that, but no, we take that kind of stuff seriously, and you had better. I'm not going to talk. I would never talk about statistics. You can ask me any statistic question you want. I'm not going to tell you, even if I know the answer. We look at this stuff carefully. We take this stuff seriously. as much, I mean, I think what was put forward earlier, the baby DUI things, okay, we'll look at that. If you're theft, yeah, that's crime involving moral turpitude.
Yes, but there's an exception to the rules of, petty offense.
Whether or not someone, but you're saying, do we look at it? We look at it, whether they're ineligible under the sentencing exception, or whether it's juvenile exception, that's a different story entirely. But first we find out whether or not it applies, then we find out whether or not you have a way out of it.
The reason I pose this question is because they lie on the form. So basically, some officers, they just say a denial, 286C, fraud, and misspell. And then that is very serious record, because that will be barred, basically, for IB, and for NIV, of course, you can seek for waiver. So the question I'm asking is whether the officer, who actually for most of these cases, the client got in trouble, and they've either got denied, then the counsel advice, right? And then that's when we get involved. And then we explore, because first of all, whether it's material, whether it's willful, I mean, all those kind of legal things. I mean, material, yeah, it's not material, because there's enough case law saying that, because as you mentioned, that it's on the record, you already know. So that's why it's not material. Because the officer, if they check the record, they find, and the arrest record, as well as the conviction record.
Okay, well, as Brad said, it's hypothetically driven, and so we could answer this a number of ways. Yeah, okay, you lie, you're 6C. We take it seriously. I mean, if you lie about a crime to try and hide it because you think it's going to make you ineligible, you think that's trying to hide something that's material, and there's no case law that you can point to that gets out of it. Zero. And it doesn't matter what you show me. You can show me Supreme Court case law, it's not going to get you out of it. I'm telling you it's not. That's material. The other thing, though, is even if there's not enough to get you 6C, you're 214B. And we're not going to try and ruin your life. If you're 6C, it's 6C. We're not going to go and gin something up. But you're not going to get a visa from us because you're 214B, because you can't be trusted because you're not credible anymore. So there's the other side of the coin. So even if they're not a Cat 1 refusal or Part A, 212A something, we're still not going to likely give you a visa, especially when you've lied about it. Mistake is one thing, lying about it is another.
Yeah, and I would add, not that mistakes don't happen in these findings in visa adjudication, but every visa adjudication, every one of these refusals are reviewed by a consular supervisor, and in certain of these refusals, something like 6C, we run those by our legal advisors' offices. So not that things don't get, mistakes happen in any large organization, but there is a lot of review of these type of decisions, so they should be very, very rare.
The reason I post this is because what happened is under the FAM, you mentioned that tiny retraction will be an excuse. See, that's why how the consular officer will take that point of view. You see, because under the FAM, the consular officer, they knew.
You're talking about two different things here, because inevitably we already know about the arrest from our records. So it's not going to get to be, just because they lied about it on the form, it's not going to be 6C and bull, because we already know about it. So it's material, and they didn't timely retract, but we already knew, so it doesn't even get to that. It squashes their credibility, and that you're all professionals. Your name is your most powerful and valuable possession. Same with an applicant, their credibility is that for them. And so when that goes out the window, we don't even trust that the sun comes up in the east out of their mouth. I mean, they lie.
Yeah, I understand that, the 214B denial, because later on, 10, 5 years later, they can apply, they overcome that. But what I'm trying to say is, in the computer, if you insert, the officer inserts 212A6C, as 7, you see, and then that also will be for life, see. Especially that affect the ID. That's why how serious the officer will insert 212A6C on the record. Because as you mentioned correctly, whether there's material and whether there's tiny retraction. That's why I pose those situations. You see, because under the families, the officer should have confront the applicant on that, and then give them a chance to retract. That's my understanding under the fan. But instead of, oh, I know that you lied. So denial 214B, but actually on records 236C, because that happened quite frequently. He's in China for some. So that's why I'm posing this is how the officer will adjudicate those kind of cases. If 214B, I think that's fair and just. And so 236C.
I take your point, but I think that we've sort of probably exhausted the discussion here on this. I mean, I've served in China. Brad is here as well as in China. I mean, there's a raft of China experience, raft of big post experience everywhere in the world that has been here today. And are mistakes made? I think, as Brad has indicated, yes. But the most important thing that he's also indicated is that when one of my officers or one of his officers wants to make this finding, we review it. If it passes muster with us, it goes back to the Home Office. If it passes muster with them, it's not. We don't sort of look at it in I guess the idea of, well, this shouldn't be done. Maybe I'm misconstruing what some argument can be made. We shouldn't be doing this because this could really ruin someone's life. I guess they should have thought about that. If it rises to the qualifications of 6C, it's kind of difficult to see how that is in the modern world because we have records of these things for the Home Office fingerprints. But it's possible that we wouldn't have it in our systems, and it could be seen as a material lie for their fitness for a visa and cutting off an avenue of inquiry, and they didn't timely retract, and therefore it's 6C. We're going to do that. If it meets the qualifications, we're going to do that. It's going to get past 3 levels of people, and if it doesn't, we're not going to do it.
Mr. Lamb, I have an angle to ask this question. This topic is on F1 students and law students below 21. They make mistakes. Suppose they use a fake ID to get into a bar, and it could have resulted in the death of an American student. But suppose they use a fake ID, will that rise to the level of moral turpitude? Because in the state of Massachusetts, using a fake ID is a felony to get into a bar, to use for any purposes whatsoever. How do you view that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is determinative. In deciding whether something rises to the level of a crime involving moral turpitude, it depends on the law in the jurisdiction where you're convicted and how that law is written. And then in situations where it's unclear, because as you said, like using a fake ID generally would not be a crime involving moral turpitude. We would probably go back and seek advice from the legal advisor's office on that, and they would make the determinative factor based on case law, looking at what the law in the jurisdiction. For people, for instance, who practice or have clients here in Hong Kong, kind of local flavor, Hong Kong has one statute for that. So somebody who intentionally takes property that does not belong to them is guilty and liable for a US $50 fine or 20 years in prison, depending on when it was they took. That's just the way the law is written. So a lot of times people are found by the legal advisor's office to have committed a crime involving moral turpitude because of the way the local statute is written. Other times the statute might be written in another country, the intentional or unintentional taking of property. Suddenly the person is convicted of that crime, we go back and they say, well, there could be an unintentional aspect to that taking, so you might not necessarily find the person CIMT.
Will this application of moral turpitude be retroactive? Suppose the person did the underage drinking 10, 15 years ago, is a high-level professional right now, or you just make him liable through the statute of limitations of the jurisdiction.
You're talking about this particular crime, like fake ID?
Fake ID, yes.
Yeah, it would be whatever the crime was at the time that they were convicted, because of course, the statutes change. So if what they did was a CIMT at that time, then they're liable for a CIMT.
I have some questions. The first one is, client has a 5-year F1 visa and a DUI arrest. How can he know his F1 visa was revoked without going out of the country?
So what I would suggest for clients is to put contact information on their application that will stay fairly current. In cases where the department revokes a visa, and I think they spoke about this in a national ALA meeting in April. We will make efforts to contact the applicant. And generally, I don't know where the person is in the United States. They've moved 3 doors, right? But we will have the information on that application. And hopefully it's current enough that it's either an email address that's still current or a telephone number for a parent. And we can say to so-and-so, they're in the US, but we could give you contact information. So we make every effort to contact them.
No, I have nothing to add other than I will point out that there are instances when we don't know. I mean, I certainly would echo what Brad says. If we know, we're going to try and find and tell you. But there are times when we don't know that the visa's been revoked. And if we don't know, then we can't tell anybody.
The next question is, will domestic violence arrest lead to the visa revocation?
The short answer to that would be, I mean, you mean prudential revocation? It shouldn't, because it's an arrest, and it's also not on its bare facts, not a crime involving moral turpitude, but it could be, depending on what else was done in the scenario. But an arrest shouldn't lead by itself to the visa revocation in this case. At the moment, my understanding of the rules, Brad may have a better knowledge of it than I do there.
Yeah, I mean, if the crime that you were arrested for is not a CIMT, then I can't say for sure, but I would say, I would believe that it would not lead to a revocation, since if there's no underlying eligibility, if there is a delay.
The next question is, issuing a visa is discretion. Can you tell us examples of when your officer have denied visas based solely on discretion and not on any legal grounds?
Okay. So there's yeah, it's easy. I can answer never. We are not allowed to do that. We have to issue visas to those who qualify, and we have to deny visas to those who don't qualify. And the whole basis for this is the INA. And so we never can refuse a visa without grounds. The grounds might be 214B, and they may be inexacting, but there's never a time when we refuse a visa without a legal justification for doing so. Not ever.
Yeah.
Same. This question is for Ms. Note. On 221G, where do you indicate that the case is sent to ARO for a waiver application?
Okay, we generally don't give a 221G sheet to tell the applicant that that we sent a waiver. The applicant is informed that we are applying for a waiver at that time. So we don't really, that's not something that's on our 221G sheet.
Okay, when waiver approved, does the officer get a count issued of visas or what procedure?
When the waiver is approved?
Yes.
Yeah, we generally, so our time frame, what we strive for is drafting a waiver within 2 or 3 days of the person being found ineligible and the officer wanting to supporting a waiver.
And we generally contact the applicant as soon as the waiver, within 2 or 3 days of the waiver being approved as well. But we thought we should get on to the next topic of the birth, because we're at half hour. Tourist visas and giving birth when they enter the United States under B1, B2 visa. Please explain the proper use of a medical treatment for the someone coming to the United States and what you perceive to be an abuse of that medical treatment when they give birth in the United States. Where do you draw a line between normal pregnancy and high risk pregnancy?
That's not something, so according to the fan, giving birth in the United States or seeking medical treatment in the United States, it's not a reason for visa denial. When an applicant presents themselves and states their purpose of travel is to seek medical treatment, whether that's giving birth or not, we have to determine, the officer determines whether that applicant overcomes 214B and has sufficient ties. One additional factor would be with an idea of public assistance, whether that person has sufficient funds to pay for whatever medical treatment they're seeking. But seeking medical treatment in and of itself is just not a grounds for refusal.
Sort of on that topic in terms of the proof of financial means to cover the treatment, what are some examples of good proof of that, and what are some examples where proof was clearly not sufficient?
Let me nitpick with your use of the word proof. They can't provide proof. They can only provide evidence. We determine if it's proof. Proof is a judgment call. So, what are
what are some examples of evidence that you would want to see, you think would be strong evidence in support of financial means to provide, to pay for the treatment, pay for the labor and delivery?
Well, the first thing that my officers are generally going to look at is, does the applicant have any idea how much this costs? This is not a free society in the United States. Things have its same costs. So do they know what it's going to cost? Do they have some statements from the hospitals and medical providers sort of outlining the costs? They know what they're doing. Then we're going to look at whether they have the liquid financial means of paying for that. Whether they do or whether or not their close family does. Especially in places like the Philippines where family ties are very important. We don't require that Betty herself have the funds to pay, but she has to have access, reasonable access, to liquid funds to pay, much like we look for students and the ability to pay for their schooling. That's what we look at. So what kinds of things are going to be able to show that? Standard run-of-the-mill financial documents, bank statements. We're not so interested in rental property and stuff that's very nebulous, that's very non-definite or what's the word? Rolling around for prospective.
Yeah, in the United States, as we know, we have a very dysfunctional healthcare system, and if you don't have insurance, they'll charge you so much money, and not even the average American can afford what they're paying. Would that be a fair standard to apply to these people from abroad?
Now you're entering into political arguments here. Is it a fair standard? If it's fair for Americans, it's fair for everybody else. I mean, what kind of political argument is this? I'm sort of challenging it because it's late in the afternoon and my boss is gone, and I'm sort of willing to take on this kind of thing. But it's a political argument, and my answers are just my plain political arguments back. If it's fair for one, it's fair for the other. Sauce for the goose.
For Officer Not in Hong Kong, the minor theft carries maximum sentence of 5 to 10 years. This would be a misdemeanor in USA. With a Hong Kong conviction for minor offense, say under $50, qualify for sentencing exception.
No, because what has been determined by the legal advisor's office is the way the statute is written. It's
based on the maximum penalty. So anything, in the States, it would be a misdemeanor. Here, anything could almost qualify for a felony depending on how the judge finds on the day.
I think there's case law on that,
Yeah.
requirement
Yeah.
on that, because the Hong Kong ordinance is so tough.
Yes.
Even having 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Why we issue to. Right? Ron, you have anything?
Oh, we would want to domestic service.
What would be the criteria for you to issue a visa for someone coming on, a domestic servant coming on a B2 visa for work authorization? What do you look for? How do you recommend for nanny visas? What's your suggestion to avoid 214B?
I don't know that we can answer that particular question, but what kind of things like that? Yeah, well, the first thing is to have a compliant contract. Most of our refusals happen right at the very beginning because the contract that is written by the employer does not meet US standards. And that's, based on where they're going, they have to tell us where they're going to be, so that we can determine the prevailing or minimum wage. They have to be paying the prevailing or minimum wage. All the requirements are set out in that. So that's kind of the first hurdle to get over. A second hurdle for people who are renewing those types of visas, we generally ask the domestic employee how much they were paid in the U.S., how long they were working in the U.S. for, if they had some kind of proof of what they were paid. I would say it's sad, but not surprising. We've had a number of domestic employees who are not paid minimum wage or not paid anything above what their, say, Hong Kong or local wage is. And if that person is not going to pay fairly in the United States, then we can issue visas in that situation. So what I would advise any applicant to do is make sure your contract is compliant, make sure you pay your employee fairly, and to the degree you can keep records of that, it could be presented when you come in for an interview. Do you have anything else? Because I know you have a number of these too.
The only other thing I would add from a Manila perspective is, if you're going to be advising clients, make sure you understand that they don't get to impute the idea of family in this case to the nth degree. It's one, spouse, minor children, okay? Spouse, minor children. Don't go beyond minor children, because the 55-year-old that still lives at home is not going to be eligible to have nanny work for them, okay? It's spouse, minor children. So we see all the time, I work for her sister. I stayed an extra 2 weeks to, look after the car. Okay, that's the way they're not going to be. You haven't complied, Mr. Employer or Mrs. Employer, and we're not going to do this again. Because as Brad said, the unfortunate history is, I don't know why, because this is a non-cheap proposition. People have the money to do this, but the history of this is that people try to take advantage of their domestic employees, and not pay them or farm them out and get around U.S. labor laws. So be advised about that.
Yeah, in fact, I have cases like that in Hong Kong. I mean, the domestic helper kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 times signing the proof, because actually in Hong Kong, in the net, there are very good guidelines about what documents you submit for domestic helpers. Okay, I have a question for Mr. Norton. How long does it take for the response from real AOS to the Hong Kong Post after the interview of these officers sent a request for NIV?
Yeah, I can't answer that. It varies on the time of year anyway, so I wish I could, but I really can't.
And so the next one is with recommendation for waiver. With negative recommendation for waiver. That is, if the officer wait for the state departments advise on this? There's no time frame.
Yeah, I don't know what the time frame is.
Okay.
I sort of a similar question, like, well, not really similar, but sort of previously, earlier in the process, but going back to the whole issue of DUIs in particular, you mentioned, referral to a panel physician. Can you speak any more in terms of at your individual posts, what the general sort of criteria are, like how sort of attenuated this, or far back in time, or isolated does the incident have to be to avoid even going to that step of referral to a panel physician?
So, yeah, I guess it's one arrest within 5 years and 2 arrests within 10.
So, is there incident? I mean, obviously you have discretion to go beyond that. So, and if you have reason to believe that, is that something that's happened very commonly?
I don't want to speak hypothetically, but I would say that we're quite busy, so we wouldn't want to make more work for ourselves or our applicants unless there was a good reason to, some kind of mitigating factor.
That's the question. What is the best method for a visa applicant to make a request for an expedited expedition in an NIV waiver adjudication under FAM 9 AM 305.4? What are the most common factors that your post would consider?
So I think the most effective way would be for the applicant at the time of interview, at the time they become ineligible, to request an expedited waiver at that time. And if a practitioner would like to assist their applicant, if that person were to be able to present any of that evidence at that time, that would be the most effective thing. As to what we would use to decide whether or not to request an expedited waiver, I think that gets into something hypothetical that I would rather not touch.
I agree with Brett. It's entirely hypothetical. I would say that probably has to do with health, life and health. Those are the ones that come readily to mind. But that's also going to be kind of difficult if you're on sort of medical death's door type of thing. Well, okay, then you better get off to the Queen Mary Hospital, or so. But life and health is, I guess, if you're an organ donor, maybe, but it's purely hypothetical.
I'd like to get into J1 applications. What problems do you see in the J1 areas that, in your view, in your counselor process?
From Manila's view, the first is people fail to remember that its principal aim is for the cultural exchange within the United States, from the United States to the foreign visitor. That's the whole reason the visa class exists. If that's not followed, and we see a lot of that, that's a problem. The second is, again, from Manila's perspective, the improper use of J1s for interns and for trainees, wrong employment, non-conforming training plans. Those are the big ones right off the bat.
Let's see, we don't have as many problems. What I would say is, to the degree that you can prepare your applicants, the number of J1s and F1s that show up who haven't paid their sales fee, or don't have the I-20, or there's an error on the I-20, cause a lot of problems.
How you distinguish these trainees from, say, J1 teachers? A lot of U.S. school districts are making extensive use of J1 teachers.
I'm sorry, can you restate the question or repeat the question?
In Manila, in the Philippines, there's a lot of teachers who come under the J1 program to work in school districts that are underserved. And they're doing primary work. How does the J1 teacher distinguish from these other J1 applicants who are coming on cultural exchanges?
Well, there is one of the 15 subcategories of the J is the teacher. So that's a recognized area. And it appears that the people who have making rules, that's ECA, have classed this as that the cultural exchange occurs when a teacher is teaching children and is sort of learning from the children about the United States. So we don't look at teachers and say, okay, it's some sort of weird J1, some weird internship or traineeship. We look at them as J1 teachers, and if they have the credentials like they should for English, for math, for science, whatever that is, we would just simply look, do they meet the qualifications for that subject that they're going to be teaching, and then we will proceed from there.
We have cases like client violated tutor A9 or A6C or A8E, but they're strong time in Hong Kong or in China or in other region. But at the time of interview, lawyers will prepare all the documents supporting the waiver. But it seems like it's an easy way out for some officers, just put on 214B. How can we do about that? Because it's scary. I mean, we have submitted plenty of documents. The client been to the States for the past 20 years, many times. Never, and for A6C or A6E, they didn't overstay. For overstay, they already overcome that 10-year bar or 3-year bar. And then they have already established that they have strong time in the country.
Okay, well, let me just point out the 214B as sort of two components, if you like. There's the, are you going to come back part of it, and there's the other part, are you going to obey the laws of the United States, including all the rules and regulations applicable to your visa category. So just because you're Li Ka-shing doesn't mean you're necessarily, we don't think you're not going to come back. We may have a question about whether or not you're going to obey all the strictures of the visa category. So so you're bringing your maid, Mr. Lee, are you going to obey the rules? No, but then you're 214B. So there's two parts to that question, or that refusal. And so it's just not automatic. The richest man in the world is automatically accorded a visa.
And just to add, there's kind of one other facet to that. What is your purpose of travel, and is that something that you qualify for a visa? I would like to go sell drugs in the United States. I'm a businessman. That's what you need a visa, right? Well, actually, no. Look into the ban. There's nothing to hear about selling narcotics. You don't qualify for a visa.
No, basically it's under the FAM, so for a lot of reasons, just for tourism or visiting your kids, studying in the States, those, it need not to be humanitarian ground. So, as I mentioned, the client already stated his intended purpose. Basically, they attend the son's graduation. And so, in those, are there any guidelines for the frontline, your officer, to look into? I mean, I know that it spend more time to educate those cases, but are there any guidelines for that? Some take more time, and instead of just saying 214B, period, because we cannot appeal on 214B, sure they can apply it, but if it is, in an instance, then we can apply the waiver. You see, so that's, any other guidelines or factors for the officer to look into it before they put on simply 214B.
So once again, a consular manager reviews all the adjudications for our officers, and I would like to say that that never happens. Realistically, I don't know, maybe it's a rare occurrence, but officers don't 214 be an applicant just because they don't want to apply for a waiver. And officers will take the time, especially now, to adjudicate a case fully. So I don't know that I can show you guidelines, but the officers will take time on these cases to decide whether the applicant qualifies for a visa. But I can see your point. It might be difficult from our point of view. We're looking at the applicant and saying, does he have a legitimate purpose of travel? Is he really going to visit his kid, or is he going to do something else? And the officer might conclude one thing where the applicant and perhaps attorney was thinking something else. Additionally, with what Martin was saying, is the applicant, we might be looking at the applicant and decide this person has a history of not obeying US law. And so maybe he's asking for a 2A1 or a waiver of 2B, but he's committed an awful lot of crimes. So while he seems to have strong ties to Colombia, all those drug convictions, I don't know, man. I really think that he might not obey US law. So based on that, I'm refusing the visa. And it might seem very easy to say, well, the officer just didn't want to look at all these documents and submit it for a waiver.
What happened is, in cases the client relate back to what you're saying, the officer said, oh, your conviction, for example, criminal conviction, will happen 4 years. You just come back 5 years later. On that kind of basis, and then 214B, you see what I'm saying? Because maybe the officer has something in mind. Hey, your conviction is so current, only 4 or less than 5 years, you shouldn't apply. Well, in those situations, how can we, inform, for example, is that under the guideline saying that unless the conviction is more than 10 years?
So, once again, we don't have guidelines, and I'll turn it over to Mark, because he looks like he has some thoughts. But generally, if an applicant has recently been convicted of a crime, then there is a bigger question in the mind of an officer, and I think all of us, will he repeat this crime? If the crime was 30 years ago and the person has a clean record since then, and is an upstanding member of society, then that worry goes away.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this subject. I'm always ready to give my own opinion.
Please do.
Well, Brad hit it out of the park. It's exactly right. The recent event of whatever the ineligibility is, whether it's CIMT, whether it's overstay, whatever that is, why that matters. But we won't, we don't have guidelines for this.
Magic figure, for example, just like E2 minimum.
No,
Some officer will have something in mind, or not written guidelines.
No, because it also depends on the severity. If you stole a candy bar versus you stole a gold watch, there's a severity factor. I'm just sort of making not a real world example either. I could dumb it down. Steal a candy bar versus steal a jet plane. But so what you have been convicted of, or how long you overstayed, or what lies did you tell? How did you aid and abet someone to illegally go to the United States? Those all matter, and the cleanliness of your record before and after, and what kind of job you hold, a job involving public trust. There's endless circumstances that will go into this, and so there's no right answer to this whatsoever. But I am not aware of any post that I've either served at or that I've even heard of where there's even an unacknowledged set of guidelines. That such a thing I've never heard of.
One.
We only have limited time. I'd like to go to one topic in my area, healthcare and immigration law, for Mr. Lam. What will you suggest for, as you're aware, physical therapists need to come to the United States on the B1 program because licensing exams are not given in the Philippines. What suggestions do you have for physical therapists, in particular, and pharmacists who must come to the United States to take the examination? They have potential problems, particularly 214B denial issue. What would you recommend that they do?
Well, I guess there's two ways of looking at this. First is the purely individual person who has no affiliation. They have sort of done this all on their own and they're just going to go and take the exam. Versus the person who has allied themselves with perhaps a recruitment agency that will help them get through the process and help them find a job. So if you're doing this on your own, it's like any interview for me. You've got to demonstrate your credibility. And how you do that is up to you at the time. There's no real good answers for that other than sort of, I guess, demonstrating your knowledge, demonstrating why you want to enter into this area of employment. Those are all fair game for the consular officer trying to engage your credibility. But for those who have allied themselves with an entity who is part trainer, part job placement agency, part coach or mentor, ally yourselves with a reputable, not the cheapest, probably not the most expensive, but a reputable company. For the company, take the steps to safeguard your good name and watch your applicants, and don't just take anyone who's going to pay you a pay stub. Make sure that you've got credible students who are going to go and take this exam and then go on and bring a claim to both the Philippines as a place for this, to your company for providing the good quality applicant, and to themselves for being good at their job.
A big challenge that I have as an attorney advising physical therapists in this context is that physical therapists and nurses have a fast track to the green card. And they'll, obviously, when they get to the United States, they could be in a green card within 2 years, even 1 year. How do I move? For an officer, I mean, the big challenge is the officer asks you, want to get your green card, and the best I can advise him is you have to say, well, on this particular visit, I'm not going to get my green card, I'm going to come back to the Philippines.
Okay, which way to answer this? There's two ways. I'll take the last one first. If one of my officers, if I catch one of my officers asking that question, the officer and I are going to have a long chat, because it's not a proper question, because it doesn't go to the class of visa. That doesn't go to the criteria for a B1. Yes, I mean, theoretically, everything goes to the criteria for B1, but that's not in there. What you're really looking at is the current intent of the person. That's what the FAM says. The present intent of the applicant. What are they intending to do? We're trying to determine whether or not you're going to go, take your exam, and return. Go, prepare a little bit, or jet lag, take your exam, return, whatever that is. So, hopefully, my officers, Brad's officers, all officers get the training, and they don't allow them their own weird picadillos to get in the way of that. But that's why we're managers and we're there and we're looking at these things. So people, when it's a B visa, they need to present credibly. We don't look at the fact that there's a fast track to this. Yes, part of the credibility issue is, do we think that they're going to go and actually take the exam and leave, versus say they're going to go take the exam, find that it's all too difficult, and then stay because Aunt Sarah is there, is going to get a job. But that has nothing to do with the whole fast track to green card or anything like that. That's their basic credibility. And that, unfortunately, even for very well-meaning applicants, sometimes they're unable to cross that hurdle. But that's what we look at. You can think of it as a standard B1 issuance or standard B1 application, and we're sort of looking at it from the credibility of a student, because that's really what they are.
Sorry, our time is up. Thank you so much for joining us, Brad and Martin. Thank you.